Welcome to day 12 of our expanded virtual conference for conscious capitalism. It is such an honor to be here with so many of you from around the world. Today, we have a wonderful day of programming planned for you that has been the result of hard work from the Conscious Capitalism team and the speakers who were originally planned to be featured at our annual conference in Jersey City. We are so thrilled by the fact that we can bring this to hundreds more, perhaps even thousands more, of conscious capitalists around the world through this virtual format. I'd like to give an opportunity for our speakers to know who is in the audience today. So if you can take a moment to add to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, the city and state and country that you're joining us from today, as well as the company that you're represented. It would give us a good sense of what community is gathered here. It's now my honor to welcome Alexander McCoben, our CEO of Conscious Capitalism.
Amanda, thank you. And I've been introducing different conscious capitalism staff throughout the first 2 weeks of this conference. And we don't have enough time for me to go into all of them now, but I just want to give a shout out and appreciation to everyone on our staff who've been so nimble, so dedicated to making this expanded virtual conference happen. As Amanda said, we were planning for a year this week to be together in Jersey City with hundreds of conscious capitalists. And it's disappointing that we're not together in person, but it's also inspiring and incredible that we're now gathered here with literally thousands of conscious capitalists signed up to participate in this conference. Because as challenging as these times are, as difficult as it is for business leaders to find a way to survive and try to thrive in this environment and going forward, the way that we can do that is by coming together. This is one of the features of the conscious capitalism movement that we've known for so long, that as a movement, we are in this together. Business is not about competition or beating others. Business is about working together, elevating humanity together, finding those win-win-win solutions that makes everyone better off. And over the course of this week and the next 2 weeks, as we keep working together to get through this COVID crisis in the world, we're going to share incredible stories of what business leaders are doing to get through this, lessons of what they're seeing on the ground, what they're trying to do, and open questions to work through together as a movement, so that we're able to come out of this, as challenging as it may sound right now, better than we were before. This is a difficult time for the world, but it also might be an opportunity for us to create, as the economy of the world restarts, a more conscious capitalism, a future where capitalism means conscious capitalism, as we've all been working towards for so long. And as more people realize that we need to come together to get through this, and that business and capitalism are fundamentally human endeavors. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us during this period. And it's my pleasure to introduce now the co-chairs of Conscious Capitalism, respectively professor at Babson College and the co-founder and former CEO of the Container Store, Raj Sisodia, and Kip Tyndall, pioneers of this movement, to share a few words with you as we get started.
Welcome to all of you as we're gathered here to talk about something that is really fundamental and important more than ever. I think, in fact, conscious capitalism is needed more than ever in an environment like this. Because this is the time we have to remember this basic principle that Herb Kelleher talked about, that the business of business is people, yesterday, today, and forever. And that's becoming really evident to us. You know, it's kind of like we are all going through, as a society, a collective heart attack, right? And we're in the intensive care unit. And what it'll take for us to come out of that is essentially that, it's intensive caring. This is a time for us to double down on caring for ourselves, for each other, and for our shared future together, because there's tremendous vulnerability. We are physically vulnerable to the virus. We are, of course, financially vulnerable, so many of us, and we are emotionally vulnerable as well. But I think that vulnerability itself is what connects us, and that's what leads us to deeper human connection and to recognizing that all of humanity is one spirit. We are all interconnected and interdependent. Our fates are intertwined. And of course, it's a very challenging time to be a leader. I don't think any leader alive has faced these sets of circumstances, but it's a time for us to show up as leaders with deep humanity and to expand with love and not contract with fear. It's a time for caring and sharing. And like all crises, there's also some silver lining in the sense of there's an opportunity here, that this crisis can in fact propel us forward, because coming out of it will not be a return to business as usual. There will be a new normal that we will create together. And I think fundamentally we're going to move towards conscious capitalism as the default way of being in the world. I think our consciousness has been awakened on a broader scale. Our compassion has been awakened. Our hearts have been softened, and everything that we experience now, we cannot unexperience that. We're going to build upon that and create a different way of thinking and acting in the world of business. So I look forward to sharing this time with you in the next few days, and look forward to hearing what our wonderful speakers have to say. And now I'd like to turn it over to our dear co-chair of Conscious Capitalism, Kip Tyndall.
In times of uncertainty and crisis than ever before. I often like to talk about wake, W-A-K-E, like a boat's wake. And everything you do and everything you don't do impacts the people around you and the world and your business far more than you think it does. And that is such a responsibility now more than ever. And I think the whole concept of that wake is more important than ever. Everything we do impacts the businesses that we're trying to lead through this unbelievable time and the people in the world around us more than ever before. And it's our great hope that the fabulous speakers that we have for this conference will help you in those decisions and help you stay true to the values and the tenets of conscious capitalism, which I think are comprised in everything that we do. I know that'll be the case for our first speaker, Danny Meyer, who I have the privilege of introducing. And hello, Danny. And it's in trying to figure out what I wanted to say in introducing Danny to the group, I thought, I wonder why it is that I always agree with Danny on everything. I like him so much. What is it about this guy that attracts me so much to everything that he does and everything that he builds? And I talked with Erin Moran, his chief culture officer, last night, and she said, well, that's because you guys tend to share the exact same set of values, and you built businesses based on pretty much exactly the same set of values. I mean, when I go to New York, my favorite restaurant is probably Gramercy Tavern. I think the best pasta in New York during good times is Maialino. If I'm going to have a burger, I go to Shake Shack. When Danny and I are trying to wrestle with who to choose as financial partners, we consulted with each other and arrived at very similar conclusions. When we were wrestling with the notions of going public, we respected what the other had to say. Why is it that we care so much about what each other had to say? I think it's because we have the same sets of values. And I think those values are also synonymous with the tenets of conscious capitalism. So allow me to read very quickly Union Square Hospitality Group's family values. The first one is excellence. And Danny talks about excellence, doing what needs to be done as well as it can possibly be done. Okay, I agree with that. I like somebody who builds a business based on that. Hospitality. And Danny has changed what the rest of us mean when we talk about customer service, enlightened hospitality, doing all that could be done for others, and more than is expected in thoughtful ways that let people know you're on their side. Now that's hospitality. Entrepreneurial spirit, seeing opportunities others have not, and creating solutions others wish they'd thought of first. That's entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what's missing so often. And integrity, doing the right thing always, using sound judgment even when no one's looking. Now that's integrity. Well, no wonder I like this guy so much, and no wonder I like all the businesses that he's built. And I think you will too. You're going to have 45 minutes with Danny Meyer right now, and I know you're going to get a lot out of it. Thank you so much. Danny?
Hey, Kip, thank you so much. And it's I tell you what, I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. I thought I was going to be in New Jersey, and obviously that's not the case, but it means a lot to me that so many people have checked in. And Kip, there's only one thing you said that I take difference to. You said that you love the pasta at Maialino in good times. I'm going to challenge you because we're going to have some bad times, and I promise you that pasta is going to comfort you just as much when we do that.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate everything you said, and what a great honor to see Raj and Alexander and Amanda and Michael. So let's go. I think Amanda and I are going to have a good conversation here and see if we can maybe just provide a couple ways of saying things that have been in your hearts anyway. I think that what's fantastic about conscious capitalism is that it's a self-selected group of leaders who actually agree with an approach to solving problems in business. Mm-hmm. And what's fantastic is that because you agree on an approach doesn't mean that there is a monochromatic way of arriving at those solutions. It just means that the spirit with which we do it is very, very similar. And within a common spirit, many different perspectives, I think, make a really, really effective mix. And so hopefully, while I promise you there won't be one thing that comes out of my mouth that you didn't already feel, hopefully we can provide some language to from which you can say, now I can actually express to others what's been in my heart anyway. And once you can do that, then I think that teaching others and leading others comes a little bit more easily.
Thank you so much, Danny. And it is a pleasure to have you joining us here today for a conversation for the community of conscious capitalists. And I think that's such an amazing way for us to start and think about the myriad ways that people practice conscious capitalism. And for some folks that might not be as familiar with your business here in the US, we've got people calling in from all around the world right now. I want to let folks know that, you are known as America's most innovative restaurateur, and you have, with your team, earned an unprecedented 28 James Beard Awards and 3 Michelin stars and numerous other accolades, as Kip kind of referred to in his introduction. And I think that the people that have the opportunity to know you and work with you say that it's your commitment to caring for people that really distinguishes you the most. And so I think that might be a good place for us to start and pick up of why you believe so much in the power of hospitality and how that's fueled you personally and professionally.
Well, I think it's selfish. I think that, we all learned the golden rule growing up: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And I think that in hospitality, you basically acknowledge that hospitality only exists if you believe the other person is on your side. Mm. Now, that is not a one-size-fits-all thing. That's a one-size-fits-one thing. Meaning this. Let me give you a quick example, and then I'll get back to the golden rule. Okay. I've seen in restaurants before where the sommelier, the person who pours the wine, and Kip can relate to that. That's Kip's favorite person in our restaurants is the sommelier. But the sommelier will find that one table wants to see the sommelier every 5 minutes. To pour their wine. The next table wants the sommelier to leave the wine on the table so that they can pour it for themselves. The next table wants the sommelier to tell them everything possible that she can about that wine. Mm-hmm. The next table wants to tell the sommelier everything they know about that wine. And so in each case, it's the responsibility of the sommelier to read that table and to understand, what do I think is going to make that person feel like I'm on their side? Therefore, one size fits one. If the sommelier went to every table and poured their wine and told every table everything about wine, half the tables are not going to feel like the sommelier is on their side. Now, let's get back to the golden rule for a minute. The golden rule taught us, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Mhm.
I believe the golden rule of hospitality is do unto others as you believe they want done unto them.
Mm.
And that implies a responsibility on each of our parts. Yes, we start from the standpoint that we want that person to be happy and to feel better. But it also implies that every person is different, and that the only way to truly succeed at that mission is to try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and have the emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
which we actually take further than EQ. We call it HQ, hospitality quotient, to ask yourself, if I were that person, what would it take for me to feel better in this situation? It's a big responsibility, but when you do it, you give, especially in business, but I would argue in education,
Mhm.
in almost any field, you put yourself in a position where you stand a chance to be that person's very favorite place to come.
Mm. Yeah, that's a beautiful way of thinking about it. And I know that's certainly the way I have felt when I have been in your restaurants from the team members. It's a beautiful culture that your team it personifies in and day out. And I wonder if, from what I know about you and what we've talked about, I know that you and I share a love of travel and the inspiration that that provides. And, you know, I think it connects with what you were just saying of understanding where that person might be coming from and how you might be able to be best of service to them. So I don't know about you, Danny, but it's been a long time since I've been 5 weeks at home and not traveled anywhere. So how are you and where are you drawing inspiration from in our current environment where we're not able to travel and draw that inspiration?
Boy, you're hitting something that is it's a big loss, because it's actually one of my areas of hope, because we will come out of this. None of us knows exactly when, and in my business, which is a business of bringing people together, which is precisely the thing that we're all working so hard not to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
The question is going to be, what will it take for people to feel safe to come out again? And, you know, after 9/11, we already had lots and lots of metal detector technology.
Yeah.
We had that for ages and ages. It just hadn't been implemented everywhere. And as soon as 9/11 happened, instantaneously we applied that technology to make human beings feel safe, to airports and office buildings and ballparks and amusement parks. Now it's going to take a lot longer to come up with a virus detector. It may take a year. It may take, who knows how long it's going to take to be able to do that properly. And as a result, you know, the human drive to gather is going to be thwarted for a while. The human drive to get on an airplane is going to be thwarted for a while. And, you know, as you just said, Amanda, I'm what's called a gastronaut. I travel to faraway places for the purpose of learning about food and learning about cultures and learning about how food actually fuels cultures. And what I miss more than anything is that. So where am I gaining my? I think I'm gaining lots and lots of inspiration from nature right now. I've never. We're very, very fortunate that if we have to be quarantined, there are 7 of us. We have 4 kids, and one of them has a boyfriend who's with us. So there's 7 of us who have been together, and we're in the countryside, and we're getting an opportunity to watch winter turn into spring, day by day, to see literally each tree changing and each bush changing, and the sounds of different birds at different times of day. And I will say that is highly spiritual for me, and I think learning about the wonders of nature, and how yesterday at this very moment we had such a massive rain and windstorm that it blew out our power, blew out our Wi-Fi. And of course I was thinking, how am I going to be with Amanda in Conscious Capitalism tomorrow? And then somehow it all came back late last night, thank goodness. But nature is what's giving me the inspiration. I also think cooking. We're cooking every single day. We've had more family dinners. We eat dinner as a unit every single night. That has not happened in my life for this many consecutive days for 30 years, 25 years probably.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's some silver linings. There's a lot that's terrible. We've lost friends. We have other friends who are very sick right now. We have many friends who have faced the worst week of their life and very, very fortunately overcome this. So I'm by no means am I saying I wish this had happened, but I do believe that there are opportunities to do things and to actually try to be a human being instead of always being a human doing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying hard, in as much as, you know, this is a very tough time for our business, and there is a lot of doing. But I do think that the spirituality that surrounds us, that is also nature, is helping to fuel me quite a bit.
Yeah, I really resonate with that as well, Danny. I feel very fortunate. While usually I'm in our office in New York City, I also live in a rural area. So that's where I have been the past 5 weeks with my family. And we have been very much enjoying the seasons change and listening to the birds and enjoying family meals together. And I know that many people in our community are connecting with that as a sense of inspiration and hope during these times as well. So thank you for highlighting that. I want to pick up on something that you said there, but I also want to let everyone know that's listening that Danny and I have a few things that we're going to talk about, but we're also going to take questions from the audience. So if you do have a question that you would like to ask Danny, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And if you can, let us know where you're calling in from, and we will do our best to get to as many of those questions as we can at the end. So Danny, to pick up on that theme that you mentioned about a spiritual sense, you know, as conscious capitalists, we are always talking about our connection to purpose and what that purpose means for us. And I know sometimes you describe it as your center. What is your center, your higher purpose, and how are you tapping into that? Is there anything beyond what you just expressed of spending time with family and nature that might relate more to the business environment and your higher purpose during these tough times?
I think that we each have a higher purpose, and I'll be glad to talk about mine in just a moment. But I also believe that when people are under stress, and we all are, these are times that are scary. I probably, in addition to smiling more, I probably cried more in this last 5 or 6 week period than I have for a long, long time, because there's a lot to feel sad about. Sometimes I feel angry. And I do believe that in times when people feel overwhelmed and stressed, we often revert to the fight or flight feelings that we have, you know, the primitive fight or flight feelings that we have. And it's precisely the time that we actually need to rely more upon our core values and our purpose than ever. You know, I know from being a kid playing tennis that I would always get to a certain plateau. And then my tennis instructor would change my grip and would say, if you want to get to the next level, you've got to change your grip. And in each case, it would always feel incredibly uncomfortable. It's like, I can't play like that.
Yeah.
And the good news was we were just doing lessons, and so the stakes were low, and you know, it would work. You'd get used to it. It was learning a new thing. But then I'd get into a match. This goes back to high school. I still remember this. And I'd be down by 2 games, and I would revert to my old grip.
Yeah.
And I would lose. And that was exactly, it was that pressure it was exactly when I needed to adapt the thing that was going to really help me win. So how does that relate to purpose? Well, it would be very, very easy right now to say it doesn't really matter to put people first. We cannot possibly put people in front of profits. We cannot possibly put purpose in front of profits. We don't even have any customers right now. We have actually, as of this minute, just so you and your audience know, my company has, Union Square Hospitality Group has $0 of revenue.
Wow.
What do you do? What do you do with your purpose at a time when you could be out of business if you don't do the right thing? And what if doing the right thing seems to be in conflict with putting people first? And so I would say that if ever there's been a stress moment where my temptation has been to change the grip, it's right now. This has been an excruciating experience. And so probably the way that we most arrived, by the way, if I were doing this live in New Jersey, you would not have a dog in the background. So I guess that's one of the things we have to put up with here. But at this moment, how do I reconcile putting people first when in fact that leads to massive number of layoffs that I never ever thought we would do? I was always so proud of never having had to do that before. And so basically I've had to reconcile in my own mind that the most crucial way to put people first is to keep them alive. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's ground zero for this whole thing. And so that's why we ended up closing all of our restaurants well before it was mandated by the government to do so, because I did not want to be in a position where we would look back at this moment and say, because we asked people to go to work, someone who worked for us got sick, or someone who was trusting us, dining with us, got sick and perhaps died from that situation. And it's been very, very tempting. I've had battles between my heart and mind almost every single day. There's a big part of my heart that would like to say, we've got these great assets called kitchens. We actually have a lot of people who would love to be working right now. There are hospital workers who need to be fed. At a minimum, why aren't we doing that? And I go through this every single day, and I keep coming back saying, the only way I can reconcile putting people first is waiting until everything I've heard and learned and read says it feels safe enough to do that. Because if someone doesn't live, that was not putting people first. Now, that leads, we have two different crises going on. They happen to be converging, but they're different. One is the health crisis, and the other is the corresponding economic crisis that goes with it. Doing the right thing for your people, in my case, and believe me, I am not being prescriptive from anybody else. People should do what they think is the responsible thing to do. And I have respect for businesses that are doing takeout and delivery in New York City right now. I have enormous respect for companies who have to do it, like grocery stores and drug stores. It's just something that if we don't have to do, which we don't, I'm just choosing not to do right now. But in making that decision, now I go, okay, great. We have zero revenues right now. And we have a pretty big weekly payroll that only works relative to the normal amount of revenues you have. So now I've got to reconcile in my mind going from striving to be a great employer to striving to be an exceptional unemployer. And that's not something that I ever woke up saying, gosh, I cannot wait to one day be known as being a great unemployer. But the fact is, the only way for us to return to being a great employer is to stay in business and to remain solvent. And so then I come to the rationale, which is we have to make these cuts. And we have to make these cuts, and then we have to make it the responsibility of every one of us who's leading this company right now to have the highest purpose of bringing our family members back to work. And it's been an excruciating set of choices to make, because when you have lived your entire career, as I have, saying that my main purpose in doing this is not just to provide jobs for people, but to create a community, as I was saying earlier, of like-spirited people who thrive and feed off of each other's amazing energy of hospitality, enlightened hospitality, to make life better. Because when it's working, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing when someone says, this is my favorite job I've ever had because I get to work with all these exceptional people. And it's a great thing when your restaurant guests say, my life got better because your restaurant existed. And it's a great thing when your community says, my life got better because you opened a restaurant near my home or near my apartment or near my business. And your suppliers feel better because you're doing more business. And yeah, you got to have really happy investors or the whole virtuous cycle doesn't work. But right now, it's just stopped. The vehicle has stopped. And now we're working on heart, mind, and faith that this is not the thing that's going to end the world. We will come back. And when we come back, the only way to come back is to be in business. And the only way to do that is to be great unemployers right now. What does that mean? I'll be real quick on this one. It means being transparent, being realistic, being honest, and providing hope. And it's that constant combination of reality and hope that people deserve. And that's why on a once a week basis, we now have an open Zoom call for everybody who's been laid off in our company. So we can let people know where we are, answer questions. We have an amazing employee resource page, which I'm so proud of our team, translated into several languages, an amazing jobs board. And you'd be surprised how many conscious capitalist companies are actually doing well right now. And they've asked to be on our jobs board for people. We have resources for people who want to have tips for how to care for their kids during this time. We have resources for emotional support. We have started a 501c3 called USHG Hugs. And we've already granted out over $600,000 to our laid off workers. We're hosting online auctions. Our guests have come to the fore. And so the very, very things which work in good times, where your stakeholders are on your side because they know you're on their side, are now working in tougher times. And I just can't wait till we're on the other side of this thing. And when people do feel safe to come back to work, and when people do feel safe to come gather in restaurants and events and sporting events and airplanes and jazz clubs, we're going to be ready. And I believe that the pent-up human desire to gather and to be with people is not going to be extinguished.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Danny, for sharing about kind of an insight into that internal process and struggle that you have been going through. Can't even imagine what that must have been like, but it's also beautiful to see, as you said, the way all of the stakeholders are leaning in and taking care of each other as they can in that environment. So it's a testament to what you have all been doing and building and creating together. I wonder, I'm sure our audience is also wondering, going through something so excruciating and so challenging, what are the ways that you are pivoting and coping to address those challenges? I know you know, as you said, you like to support that human desire to gather and create those warm and personal experiences for folks. So how are you taking care of yourself to make sure that you're able to do that in these changing times that are changing by the moment almost these days?
we have what we call the oxygen mask theory. And, you know, when you're a kid and you're on the airplane, it's such a counterintuitive thing when you hear them go, when the oxygen mask falls down, put it on your own face first before you take care of your kids or whoever's next to you. And yet there's obvious reason for that, which is that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And it's a very, very imperfect science, because I think for people who are wired as givers, I think there's sometimes a reluctance to take that extra time to take care of yourself. I'm doing the best I can. I will say that I'm keeping up with exercise, which is an important thing. I'm certainly eating plenty, and I'm feeling lots of love from my family and from my team members, and I'm getting lots of spirituality from nature. And I'd say the one area that I wish I were doing a better job of in terms of taking care of myself is sleeping. That I've probably never had more vivid dreams, and they're not very hard to figure out. I'm actually working stuff out, very, very tactical stuff in my mind. And I'll wake up 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night, and you know, and it's like, stop. I want to tell myself, stop being so literal. Just like, that's what the day is for. This is for
rest,
you know,
and rejuvenation
right now. So I'm trying to work on that one. But I think that we are all feeding off of each other. And when I say we, I mean not just my own team and not just the people who remain on the team, because many of our team members and family members are not on our payroll as of today. But we're also doing things like this. You know, I'm encouraging people on our team to attend webinars that they're interested in, and there's so much learning going on. I have never in my entire career spent more time speaking with colleagues, you know, chefs and restaurateurs from all over the world, from Great Britain, Australia, France, certainly New York friends, certainly people from Chicago, and people who are typically seen as being competitors or rivals, are coming together and saying, we have a common purpose. And, you know, this rising tide, which at its best lifts all boats, is in a trough right now. But I think that, you know, if you look at the ocean, every trough in the waves ends up coming back up again. And I think that the amount of learning that's taking place is really feeding me right now. And I hope that I can then pick and choose those things that resonate with me and share those things with our team members as well.
Yeah. And, you know, Danny, you mentioned hope before, and, you know, you're starting to talk a little bit about getting on the other side of what this looks like. So how are you envisioning the future right now as a family man, you know, for you, for your teams, for the business and the restaurants? The industry has obviously been very hard hit. So what are you envisioning for the future of your community and your people?
Well, I'm actually doing a lot of visioning, because that really helps me. I often envision the thing that I want it to be, and then that helps to plan to get there. And there's a few different ways that I'm thinking about that. One is reopening our businesses and really planning for what that will look like. And that won't look, the vision I have of Gramercy Tavern or Union Square Cafe or the Modern, which is in the Museum of Modern Art, and you know, museums are going to take a while to come back as well. It's going to take a while before we have these bustling bars where people are shoulder to shoulder, and you hear the beautiful sound of the clanging silverware and the clinking of glasses and the smells of the beautiful plates of food wafting under your nose. I can't wait to have tart flambe and a glass of Riesling at the Modern one day.
Yes.
And I'm envisioning that. And I'm envisioning looking out onto the sculpture garden at the Modern, at MoMA, and seeing all kinds of museum goers looking at art, which is even more fun than looking at the art itself. So I'm envisioning all those things, but I also realize that to get to that point, we're going to need to probably have a mid-step. And the mid-step is going to be different for every single one of our businesses. We have a couple places called Daily Provisions. We're planning 2 more of them to open. And I can envision them being really, really pioneers in our company in terms of the takeout and delivery model. I can envision our barbecue restaurant, Blue Smoke, where barbecue is such a great takeout kind of business. I think it's going to be slower for, a Michelin-starred restaurant where you typically don't think about takeout. We have a restaurant called Manhattan, which is on the 60th floor of a building downtown with exquisite views of Manhattan. That's not a business that you typically think of takeout or delivery, because how do you take out or deliver that view? You got to go there to do it. So we're going to try to create a critical path and timeline, including some pivots for each one of those businesses. We have an events company called Union Square Events, which caters. It's going to be a while before baseball comes back where we serve food. It's going to be a while before airlines are as busy as they once were. We serve food in first class on Delta. So we know that's going to take a while, but we do believe that as the economy begins to come back slowly, you will find that people in office buildings will probably come back before restaurants do, and perhaps we can pivot and create meals for office workers as well. So we're thinking about what does it take slowly to get back open while people are learning to feel safe again, to gather. But then we're thinking beyond that and asking, we don't just want to get to the other side of the river here. It's a wide river. We want to ask ourselves, what are the things that we can add to life using the principles of hospitality, using our purpose, that connect to people who are now learning to live life differently. We've all gotten pretty good at Zoom. And what does that imply? Does that imply we should be thinking about 4-day work weeks? Because if we've had 0, it's not that we're not working really hard, but do we all have to be in the same place at the same time? What does that imply about conferences? If this Conscious Capitalism conference is effective for people at a distance, maybe there won't need to be as many. And you're going to look at your budget for next year and say, do you know how much money we spend bringing people together? And you know how much money people spend getting to Austin, Texas, or wherever the conference happens to be? Maybe we look at that differently. So we're trying to think ahead as well. And here's the last thing I would say is that this moment has certainly shown me something that I've probably seen in my life when someone who I love is really sick with cancer, and you want to do everything you possibly can for them, and you're wired to solve problems, and you're wired to solve problems quickly. And you go, but I can't. There's just, all I can do is love them right now. And I think that similarly, this pandemic has certainly eluded my ability I can't solve the pandemic. I can do what I can do. But if anything, I think it's taught me that going more slowly may be the best RX right now. Is that there's no decision, I can't solve anything today that being a little bit more thoughtful wouldn't make better 3 days from now or 4 days from now. And so if I've learned one thing is slow may win this race.
Yeah, that's a very powerful way of thinking about it and looking about it. And certainly That's what we have to do during these times is kind of slow down and notice that we can create better opportunities for those we love. I want to turn to our participants now, Danny, and collect some questions from them. And so the first one is from Diane Johnson, who sounds like you guys actually used to work together on Share Our Strength board in New York City. And she is saying that given that folks are suggesting that 70% of independent restaurants will likely close, what are some things that people listening can do to support restaurants and the industry, what's happening right now? I know you referenced the Employee Relief Fund and the auction, which is still open the rest of the day today, if anyone is interested in that with the Union Square Hospitality Group's auction. But what are some ways that people listening can support the restaurant industry from what you're seeing?
Well, Diane, I appreciate your question. You know, a lot of restaurants have been selling gift cards. Mm-hmm. It's one form of GoFundMe, I guess, to put some cash on the balance sheet. We did that in order to seed our Hugs Fund. For an entire week, we sold gift cards and gave 100% of the revenues to the Hugs Fund. And along with me, a bunch of our senior leaders gave, in my case, 100% of my compensation, and in case of many other leaders, a very significant part of their compensation. So what you could do from the outside, besides buying gift cards, and it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. Or I believe that almost every restaurant I know currently has some type of employee relief fund. We've had a lot of guests step up and offer us auction prizes, which is fantastic, because generally in the restaurant business, we are asked to give deals to somebody else's auction, and it's really remarkable. Our auction has done so well that we're going to probably do a new one every single week, because now we have people stepping up to offer something that they do. It's, you know, it could be tickets to the U.S. Open, which we've gotten, or it could be, you know, tickets to baseball games. All the things that are going to come back are going to be highly useful. One of our amazing alum who retired after probably 20-something years to open their own bed and breakfast just offered a stay for 8 people at their bed and breakfast, and it's going for a lot of money. That's a good thing. But I want to just share something that doesn't cost a penny for anybody, and that's to write a note. Restaurants play such an important role in communities to bring people together. They are our version of the Italian piazza, where people come together and everybody has a favorite waiter or maitre d' or chef or maybe even a favorite restaurateur. But just, I can't tell you how good it is. If you're in our business, you're somebody who's really good at giving hugs, but most people who are good at giving hugs are also people who appreciate getting a hug back, because you kind of can't do one without the other. Yeah. It just feels so good to hear from people and just to say, I miss you, and we cannot wait till you guys get reopened, and let us know anything we can do. And I know that sounds like a very simple thing, but it doesn't cost more than the 5 minutes it takes to write that note, and it can really mean the world for somebody, because we thrive on human connection.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful gesture so many folks can make anywhere that you might be calling in and joining us from. And I can't give you a hug right now, Danny, but if I could, I would. And I certainly am looking forward to the days when not only your restaurants, but all of the restaurants in New York City and beyond are open.
Can I share one thing on that note?
Absolutely.
Gets back to one of your questions several questions ago, but I think music, I'm listening to music more carefully right now. And it's amazing how a lot of music out there, like any good art, expresses itself differently at this time. And the passage from Ecclesiastes that the Byrds made famous with "Turn, Turn, Turn." You should listen to that song at some point.
Yeah.
And it's pretty remarkable what that has to say about this moment, including a time to refrain from embracing.
Indeed,
It's
I will.
not the first time this has happened.
Yeah, I will definitely be looking up the lyrics to that song. I'm starting to play them in my head as you referenced it. So I think, in a way to kind of close out our conversation, which has really been amazing, Danny. I wanted to see if you might share a little bit of insight into what your day to day looks like. You know, you've referenced a few things that you're doing, some of your practices, but without all the hubbub. And as you said, you're kind of moving a little bit slower. What does your day to day look like, and what are you looking for? Is there something that you might be looking forward to in the future that might help more people to join us in the community of conscious capitalism, considering the circumstances?
I think you're asking me two questions. My days go so quickly right now. I think I don't understand time right now. It's which day is the weekend, which day is Monday. The only reason I know what day it is that I try to have a virtual workout 3 days a week, and that's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Because outside of that, every day just blends in. There's so much communicating to be done right now, and I think that somebody shared with me that if ever there were a time to have a higher purpose and to communicate to your team, it's now. And until people start rolling their eyes saying you're over communicating, you probably haven't done enough. That could probably be true for any time, but I find that my day is really kind of 4 different parts. One is making tough choices. Number 2 is communicating. Number 3 is learning. And number 4 is making sure to check in as much as I possibly can with my family. And sometimes that means taking long walks together just for the purpose of checking in. Sometimes that means cooking together. Sometimes that means watching a movie or something on TV together. But I find that if I can do those things and then try to sleep as well, things are working out pretty well. But I will say, there's a John Lennon song that I probably hadn't heard for a lot of years. Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Listen to that one too sometimes, because it's true. It's really a remarkable time, and we will all look back on this time and we'll all be judged based on who were we, because this happened to all of us. There's no one on this call right now who has not been touched by this and who has not known somebody who's been sick and whose business has not been changed. And yet what we can all look back at some point and say, who were we? What kind of choices did we make? Did we let our higher purpose be our compass? And even though there's no manual for this thing, there is a compass we all have for how to navigate through it.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a 2-for-1 question, I guess, in the way that I had phrased that. And so perhaps in any closing remarks that you might want to share with the community before we wrap up and move to our next section, whether you want to talk about your vision for the future or hope that you're seeing, or additional ways that we might be able to be supportive. Anything else that we haven't explored yet that you might like to share?
No, you have a remarkable career ahead as a talk show host. You did a great job. And I would just end by saying, keep learning and keep loving.
What a beautiful way to end. Well, thank you, Danny. This has been an absolute honor to learn with you and from you. And we really appreciate hearing from you. And best of luck. I'll see you in New York City sometime soon, hopefully.
Thank you, Amanda.
Alrighty. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks all of you.
Bye-bye.